I love Doom, right? And I've been enjoying the franchise for as long as I can remember. My first ever Doom was Doom 64 back when I was a kid, and from that point I was pretty much hooked. I've been quite fortunate in my broadcasting career where I've been with Doom a fair amount as of late. I commentated a bunch of the Doom 2016 multiplayer activity at QuakeCon 2019, and I even hosted the Doom speedrun marathon there, which was also at QuakeCon that year. It was kind of surreal to me, really, watching players like King Dime, who I've watched for ages. My point is, I'm a bit of a fanboy. I also love fighting games, a ton of them, some of which I play using a Fightstick because they're old arcade titles where stick was the only option. So I just learned to use the control method that was seen as the default for older games, so I could go with the controller originally intended for the game in question. I've always had a fascination with modified fight sticks. The creativity people can put into them can take an everyday stick and give it some real personality, or in some cases, put their own flair into a controller that they're going to be using a lot. In a lot of these instances, giving players a blank canvas for how they want their fight stick to look, whether it's custom artwork, buttons, whatever. The bottom line is, modifying a fight stick is actually a fairly common practice for fighting game players in general. The amount you see at tournaments, for example, is a lot more than you'd think. The reason I've brought this up in a Doom video is because I've been riding the Eternal hype train as much as everybody else, and in the spirit of purchasing a new stick and not being sure what I wanted to turn it into, as I had a burst of creativity and wanted to modify a stick with a cool design, I ended up with this. This started as a PlayStation Venom stick, and what it became is a Doom Eternal fight stick, using the Doom Eternal official artwork as the base design, as I fell in love with that as soon as I saw it, and the parts themselves are red and black Sanwa parts. The main 6 buttons and the joystick are made by Sanwa, a Japanese manufacturer, and the 2 buttons on the far right are Sumetsu buttons, also Japanese parts. I used this as an opportunity to go full Doom mode and take some Doom 2016 pentagrams, which is once again straight from the game, and it gives a nice, edgy effect. The real finishing touch is that I was able to get one of the Doom Eternal gods to sign the artwork, Hugo Martin, who, by the way, was a really nice guy, as I briefly caught up with him at QuakeCon 2019 and was more than happy to sign the stick. I'm always going to fanboy over that. Cheers, Hugo! I had this idea to take 2 of my great loves in id FPS and fighting games. What if I Frankenstein's monstered them together and played a variety of Doom games using this fight stick? What could possibly go wrong? What you're about to see is exactly what, but oh my lord, did I have a good time getting there. Let's get stuck in. To get this immediately out of the way, I had to make sure that Doom could be controller supported, as fight sticks often use console controller internals. I'd never actually tried to play Doom on PC with a controller, but for this, I had to, and I wasn't super sure how to do it. So I used a version of running Doom games called Xandronum, which is excellent for mods and custom WODs, which is actually what I use Xandronum for anyway, but it turns out it works just fine for controller support. Starting with Ultimate Doom, the first thing I had to tackle was the controls themselves. After setting up controller support, the stick wouldn't stop looking up and to the side. Once I completely turned off vertical capabilities, the stick wouldn't stop looking to the left. Obviously, this made things kind of awkward, but after fiddling with a bunch of general free look settings for quite a while, I eventually got it to look straight, as absolute classic Doom does use a set horizontal look system for the most part. Once this got working, we had the matter of controls. Movement was the big one. Regular keys like fire or use would be pretty self-explanatory. It's the movement that needs to be just right to make sure shooting while moving doesn't feel really strange. At first, I had forward and back movement as forward and back on the joystick, with left and right turn being left and right on the stick too. Strafe left and right would be bound to these 2 buttons. While it worked, moving felt a little hard on my left hand, and almost like I was steering some kind of clunky, heavy vehicle or something. It got tiresome really fast, and didn't feel like I was in control at all. I then changed it up so strafe was left and right on the stick, with the old strafe buttons being left and right turn instead, essentially swapping the 2 over. This was an immediate improvement, and it made the world of difference. As for the rest of the buttons, fire would be this button, so it's a simple thumb tap and it's not too far away from the turn buttons. And use was up here, so that as my hand naturally sits over these buttons, use is a little finger tap. It's all kind of where it feels it should be. It felt super strange in my first ever run through. I kept swapping weapons by accident because I had the two weapon swaps kind of smack bang in the middle of the stick. I mean, just look at this disaster right here. I got the hang of it eventually, but this was kind of hard to play through for the first time. Using this input, I tried playing through both Ultimate Doom and Doom 2. If you're watching the gameplay and thinking, man, that looks clunky as hell, you'd be correct. It's every bit as clunky as it looks, but thanks to the legendary old-style smooth controls and not being that dependent on loads of buttons, it absolutely works. I could have played through both entire games with this if I wanted to, and it would be totally possible. The only issue I had was, after a while, the stick would gradually start looking up anyway. If I didn't beat a map fast enough, I'd be pretty blind by the end of it, and I'm not sure what was causing that. Oh no! I can't hit him! I can't look down! Oh my god. Yes! After playing through these games a bit, I was looking at potential challenges, something I could do to push myself using this weird stick layout, and that got me on the topic of speedruns. Now, I watch a creator on YouTube called Carl Jobst. I'm really sorry if I've butchered your name there, mate. He's a really well-known speedrunner, but recently he's exploded onto the YouTube scene as somewhat of a speedrun historian. He's covered Doom in the past, and in one particular video, he issued an open challenge to everybody who watches his content. The challenge? Beat E1M1 on the very first Doom on the UV difficulty with maxed demons cleared on the map. The title of this category is UV Max. You had to get a final time of 36 seconds or faster. Being the naturally competitive guy that I am, I thought this was the perfect challenge using this kind of stick, which is not mega ideal, but I gave it a good go. This is a small, detailed log of some of my progress. I sat and tried this for roughly 2 hours before my hands started to hurt, and I really didn't want to push it. I like my hands, and I don't want to break them. Oh, so close, we're almost there. Well, I say that. There's only 50, but you know. Yes! 47 now, like, just, you know, 11 seconds faster. It's easy. Oh, that might be alright. Hey, that's not bad, to be honest. All things considered. This was actually pretty fun, and AI frustrations aside, with some demons just not grouping up the way I wanted to, or being kind of far apart in key locations when ideally they're more grouped together, I was eventually able to get it down to a pretty consistent method by studying actual good times on YouTube. After a lot of refining as much as I could given the restrictions I put on myself, the fastest I could get to was 45 seconds. Not bad given the circumstances, but I think I'll leave the faster times to the pros. I didn't want to end things here though. I play a ton of Doom 2016, so why not that? Okay, so Doom 2016 was a million times harder to set up because I had to get a PS4 pad working in Steam Big Picture. The reason I have to do that is so I can custom bind all of the PS4 controller inputs to other inputs on my stick. Otherwise, the stick with its default layout is completely unusable. The joystick acts as the D-pad, so we can't even move, let alone look around. I'm not going to bore any of you with the details here, but I did eventually get something that resembles a usable stick layout for this Doom as well. It just took forever. The controller bind system isn't particularly intuitive on Steam Big Picture, and even then, it takes a mammoth amount of trial and error to get it right. So, what are we left with? Well, first, we can't look vertically at all, just like classic Doom. There's no way I can bind any of the buttons in a way that lets me look up or down conveniently. You just have to roll with the punches in that effect, although not being able to look up and down did have its obvious drawbacks. Other than that, movement and looking left and right is identical to my classic layout. However, the fire button is now the jump button, and there's two reasons I moved the fire button elsewhere. First, my thumb is often the jump key because I jump with spacebar when I usually play Doom. Secondly, I have a technique for firing and swapping weapons immediately that's actually really usable on stick, but I'll explain it later. I had a button for weapon swap, a button for BFG, which I kept, and a button for melee/use. This left me with something that could kind of be played, and to test it, I jumped into some arcade mode. First of all, imps are jerks. They're just way too small to shoot by themselves. You have to melee them to line up a target and then get the shot. Glory kills were the most efficient way to finish anything off, which is pretty typical of this game, but really important on stick. I encountered an issue almost immediately. Demons are a lot more vertical in 2016. Imps can climb walls and maintain high ground when possible. Now, after recording this run-through, I noticed that the idiot that I am placed the camera in the worst possible place to demonstrate verticality. So I've quickly re-recorded to show you the immediate trouble one would have trying to hit an imp that is way too high up to actually do anything to. My plan B was to use the necessary tools that I had. After that, the fighting began, and it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever suffered through. Not being able to look around was a challenge, to say the least, and I spent a lot of it really trying to line up a shot. I couldn't use the weapon wheel, so I had to stick with whatever two weapons the game gave me if I ran out of ammo. The fighting in general after that is pretty self-explanatory, to be honest, just with hilariously bad control, but at its core, still kind of playable, I have to be honest. That was until I encountered new demons. Remember when I said vertical demons were hard to shoot? Oh no. Yeah, I hate cacodemons. Lining up anything of a basic shot on them was something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Pinkies were hard too. Dodging them was a bit of a pain in the backside. Barons, not so much, because I always tried to keep BFG ammo free for when they appeared. All in all, this resulted in a play around that was a little bit kind of a playable experience. I could certainly get by on easier difficulties, but with issues like not being able to look up or down would likely really create obstacles almost immediately. But I stayed true and managed to actually pull it off using my stick, and that was the core objective. Do I do it? I don't know, I'm not really sure if I should. Nah, let's play multiplayer! I said I was going to talk about a quick switching technique on stick, and here it is. Although this is without question just a worse way to play multiplayer, having weapon shoot on one button and weapon swap on the button left to it, I use both buttons to fire and swap instantly if I use 2 fingers for each button, kind of one after the other. Shoot first, swap frames afterwards. This is a common technique in fighting games and, in a strange sort of way, works quite effectively for the double shotgun loadout on a stick. Just be close range and you're able to do damage thanks to the famous quick switching technique, and you haven't really got to aim either, just line the people up and make sure they're central. Steering the pinky felt like an old truck driving simulator or something, but it worked out and I managed to get more than 1 frag, which is all I can ask for with a control scheme like this. I had to use the pinky because any kind of accuracy based demon is straight up not happening. It had to be melee only or bust. And that's it. For what started out as curiosity getting the better of me, I think, I ended up with what really felt like a unique Doom experience. It definitely played better on the older games, but for the sake of experimentation, I'm just glad I got it working in Doom 2016 as well. Who knows, maybe I'll revisit this when Eternal comes out. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, make sure to drop this video a like and consider subscribing for more content to come. I make a variety of videos on this channel and some of it may tickle your fancy. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. For anybody looking to take the channel support just that little bit further, I do have an official Patreon page that I'll link in the description of this video. Thank you so much to everyone that has backed me so far, it goes an extremely long way, and for any potential new backers, thank you so much for your support as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.